Thank you for joining us. Today's guest is Igor Meystelman. He's a divorce attorney turned relationship coach. Igor, thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
I like to start with 67 seconds rapid fire questions. Yes, no, quick answers. Live or Zoom conversation?
What about it?
Would you prefer live
Oh,
or
preference.
Zoom?
Um, Probably live.
What color would you paint a portrait of yourself?
One color,
You can choose as many as you like.
sky blue.
Sky blue. Best gift received?
Uh, I can't think of a specific thing. It's quality time with my family. I took time off for quality time.
What would people be surprised to learn about you?
um, I have 8 kids.
Are you an introvert or extrovert?
I am an introvert disguising as extrovert.
Same here. I get you. What would you like? What would you take on desert island?
My wife and um, my books.
Pet peeve.
A water bottle. I have a water bottle that I'm very attached to.
If not here, where would you like to live?
If by myself, then an Amazon forest. If with my family, then probably in Israel.
Biggest strength.
My heart,
Sympathy or empathy?
empathy.
One person, alive or dead, would you would like to have coffee with?
Friedrich Nietzsche.
Guilty pleasure.
My daughter's brownies.
One thing you can't live without.
My creativity.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Compassionate, dedicated, dreamer.
Thank you. That was the end of our week round. And now
Yeah.
well, that is over. Now you can answer as to the next questions as long as you'd like. I believe you moved to the US when you were 11 from entirely different culture. How did the move to a new country, to a new school affect your life at that age?
At first, it was surreal. I was born in Kiev, Ukraine, during the 80s. Long lines, hours of wait to get basic foods. I don't think I ever wore shoes my size till we came to America. Um, and to walk into a store with what seemed like endless abundance was just very surreal. Um, Hard to comprehend the contrast of my two lives. Um, the abundance was very hard to relate to and understand. That would be item one. Item two was social standards, mores. Um, Again, hard to understand what it means for a person to sing on a sidewalk and and people just walking by as if nothing's happening. And comparing in my mind that if we were in Kiev, that person would be arrested, thrown in jail, and disappear. and um, and then to smallest things, to interactions with peers, um, things that I guess got people excited, interested, the things people talked about. Um, I frequently felt like an outsider looking in than part of my surrounding milieu. Um, it was difficult to integrate to some degree till this day. I struggle integrating um, my own authentic existence with my surrounding environment, um, individuality, and communal expectations, the freedom the society offers, both legally and de facto, while trying to comply with or live up to expectations of different within different aspects of my life. Um, it's a constant tightrope dance, trying to hold both realities.
Hmm. Interesting. Did you succeed in looking back now, to keep the
This
authenticity of where you come from and reality of your life?
this might this might be a running theme throughout this conversation. I have a feeling because I'm going to I might be pushing back in unexpected ways. So, for example, I would tell you, um, have I succeeded? If the question is in a sense of reconciling um, contradictions, probably not. Have I succeeded in taking steps towards making some peace with holding the contradictions? I feel I've made some progress recently, like in the last 1 or 2 years. I started writing more intensely. I feel like I'm in a season of writing, and I'm actually in the middle of. It's funny you asked that question from the outset because I'm in the middle of writing a book. I'm in the middle of writing several books, but one of them is, I guess it's sort of a memoir of my own life. It was really meant to just be my own therapeutic journaling, sort of, but it started evolving into a project that I felt maybe one day will be worthwhile beyond my own children and family legacy. Um, it's called I Found My Name in Exile. And I cried almost every page that I was writing. And that was showing me that how much there was there were things that were not yet fully worked out inside that I really needed to give voice to. Um, and as I was writing it, I was like, I know I'm not the only one. There must be other people who have similar experiences in their own ways, in their own journeys. Um, and I'm hoping one day the book will be published and people will find that something will resonate. But I would say yes, that reconciled, no, finding peace within the contradictions a little bit more, finding peace.
Interesting you touch on the book. I was asking down the road, had a question about whether you're thinking about writing the book, but listening to you and learning about your story, I can't wait for it to be published. Hopefully, you'll let me
Thank you.
know, and maybe
Thank
we'll
you.
do another conversation just about just about the book, because I'm sure what I've seen, what I was able to read, what I'm able to hear doesn't even comprehend the journey that you have in internal journey, not just physical but emotional journeys. So
Yeah.
let's stay a little bit with little Igor, little kid. What was your dream growing up?
I would say there are two phases. Growing up in Ukraine, this is going to sound maybe silly, but the dream was to be an academic. Family, my family of origin placed a lot of emphasis specifically on me um, to succeed through the academic sort of channel. A lot of talk about, achieving high levels of education and being in that realm. Interestingly enough, when we came to America, um, and I started becoming very enamored with Hollywood and movies, and specifically like action genre, I wanted to be an FBI agent. I wanted,
Mm.
so to speak, catch the bad guys. And in fact, towards that pursuit, I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City, pursuing this, only to then, interestingly enough, finding my way back to academia because one of the professors who I really admired, she was kind of like my mentor during those years, during the 4 years of college. And she kept saying to me, like, you're much bigger than that aspiration. Um, and that's how I wound up applying to graduate schools. And I was on my way. Eventually, I mean, if it's going to be relevant to the conversation, I'll mention it. But I found myself in UCLA. I was in a PhD program for history, specializing in 18th century Enlightenment, and um, and so sort of like jumped over that second phase of dreaming, found myself again in academia, temporarily at that point.
Do you believe there's some truth to it, of what is called immigrant mentality of overachievers? Like a famous anecdote comes to mind. The mom is asked, "How old are your kids?" She said, "This lawyer is 5, this attorney is 7." Did that apply to you at all?
I definitely felt it internally. I do agree that there is an immigration mentality, which as I myself get older and have a family, I I appreciate in a way that I did not when I was younger. I feel like if you're immigrated, I think for a lot of people, the premise is we're in search of something greater than where we left. Otherwise, why leave? And so, if we're in search greater, there's no bigger way we're going to try to live that than through our own children. And so I think it's built into the family's sort of like a stamped into the DNA that there's this great undertaking that took place. That the migration was not just to migrate, but it was to pursue something. And so, even though I would not say, around every dinner was a conversation like, "New how's school," but it was so palpable, um, like it was like understood without being said that there will be pursuits and higher aspirations, academically, before we even discuss career paths. Like college was like it was a given that there's going to be college.
In the University of Criminal Justice, where did you pivot from wanting dreaming about becoming FBI agent to becoming a lawyer? With that mentor, was that some realization with being an intern somewhere?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, what happened was, um, being immigrants and being from middle class family, um, I had enough clarity by college that I really, um, can't just keep relying on my parents for even just basic daily needs. Like if I wanted just to treat myself to a lunch in Manhattan, I didn't want to just kind of live as meeting my parents. So I was trying to figure out a way how I could have a job while being in college. I worked throughout high school locally in Brooklyn, where I grew up. So I found out in the university there was a program called the Learning Center, and they needed English and math tutors for kids that were like coming in from inner city schools and needed sort of like this bridge to help close the gaps on their lackings in math and English. And so I applied for the job. They hired me, and it was convenient because that way I could just basically spend the whole day in college. When I had my classes, I attended classes, and then outside of those hours, and I'm not studying, I was tutoring. And it's just very interesting when I reflect back on it how I started as a job, and then as I kept going, as the years went on, and certainly by junior year of college, I just became aware that something spontaneously blossomed inside of me. And I saw how much I enjoyed the exchange of ideas. At that time, I would call them aha moments. Like I'll tell my friends, like I'm sitting with a student, they have a block. I'm trying to help them have a light bulb moment. And when those moments would happen, for me, it was like exhilarating. It was like somebody was in the darkness and all of a sudden they were in light. And I would tell them how like it was not about math, it was not about grammar, it was about bringing somebody from darkness to light. And I began to really like deeply enjoy the work, and everybody around me started seeing it. And there were like all sorts of jokes of like I think like the one I guess like really stayed with me is we had a policy you could not tutor more than 3 students at a time. And so, and there were like sign up lists. Students could come into the learning center and sign up when they wanted to come in for tutoring, and they would just see whatever tutors available. So kind of like the joke was that Igor could see unlimited number of students. There were no limitations. Um, and then like I would tell them like what's going on. I thought we had a policy of 3, and they were just kind of like, well, for you we make exceptions. And I think even when I was, as I sit now, my 45-year-old self, and I'm trying to connect to that 21-year-old me, um, and even now, as I say it back to, like, at that time, I did not appreciate that what they really were saying to me, that you're bigger than our limitations. Yes, we have to have framework. We need frameworks to exist. Um, but you're bigger than this, and we believe in you. And that's for sure a big theme that accompanies me throughout my life is I struggle deeply being willing to accept um, things like that, compliments, recognitions, um, probably also in part having the Soviet experiences.
Being an introvert, was it hard to accept the compliment? And did you have an inner strength that and knowledge and self assurance, confidence to know that, or was that a revelation for you at that moment?
Very hard to accept at that time in my life. It was almost like a wall. It would arrive and just fall down. It would not penetrate. It was really not until um, we're fast forwarding more than a decade, but it was really not until thanks to my wife who invited me to, in a very clever way, to come with her to do couples therapy, that in that journey, which then, again, I'm giving you like snippets, which then turned into pretty much a 5-year intensive journey that she and I went to do couples work, that simultaneously we were deepening our own relationship and we were deepening understanding of ourselves and how the relationship was shining light on our own unresolved dimensions. That through that work, I was discovering what happened to my self-esteem, how it was harmed, what the repair process would look like. Um, and one of the big items was why I was struggling accepting compliments, willing, no, uh, almost incapable of seeing in me what other people were seeing in me, or so they were telling me. I always assumed a very dismissive, not me. You're confusing me with somebody else. So that's not me. Um, and shifting out of that posture and to be able to receive, um, well, for sure, one of the hardest journeys for me.
From that moment, when you tutor kids, you mentioned you did PhD in 18th century Enlightenment, and paint the road, explain the road to from that to law school, from tutoring the college, Hofstra College to. I,
Oh wow.
tr-
Well, yeah, that would fill in another
How do
major.
we? Where do we pivot to being an
Multiple,
attorney?
yeah, multiple pivots. So first of all, during that junior year in college, as I was experiencing this reconnection to the academic slash teacher in me, that's when my advisor, she would say to me, like, that's where you need to go. So I started applying to graduate schools. And of course, with the echoes of the families of origin, we're not going to do masters, we're going all the way. So I was applying immediately into PhD programs. And there were four schools that accepted me, and one of them was UCLA. UCLA offered me a full scholarship. So that was that kind of sealed the deal. Um, and so I went off to UCLA only to, in the beginning of the first year, meet a rabbi on campus who was
Mm.
doing what they called outreach. And he just approached me and said, excuse me, are you Jewish? I said, yes. And he said, do you want to come to my house for a Sabbath? And I said, what is Sabbath? And he said, oh, you have to come to my house and you'll make friends and free food. And I did not know anybody in Los Angeles. I was totally fish out of water. I was renting an apartment right outside of campus, studio apartment, like a true 23-year-old, idealistic academic in a foreign land. They just happened to have spoken English. And so I went to his house, and that turned into a year-long, deeply intellectual battle of search for truth, meaning, um, connecting to my own heritage. And by the end of that year, I decided that I needed further search, and I decided to take a sabbatical leave, and I went to Israel for a year to study. Um, and during that year in Israel, I realized that um, I'm not going to continue the PhD, and that I needed more time. Right, I need to take now the time to reflect more deeply on myself, to set the foundation and the trajectory that I really wanted to be on for the rest of my life. So I spent the second year in Israel, and during the second year is when I started saying, well, what am I going to do now? I'm not going to medical school for 8 years. I'm going to be 26 years old, and I had a sharp mind. I have a sharp mind, and everybody says, well, you make a great lawyer. You know how to argue with anybody, and I'm like, I'm not going to be an accountant. So, so, so just law school sort of began to kind of surface as a natural path forward, because I knew I'm going to need a career path and I need to be able to provide for a future family that I'm hoping to have. There was not much I could do with a. I had a double undergraduate degree in history and political science. I knew I did not want to be a professional politician, so 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 the kind of everything just kind of you know crystallized into, okay, law school it is. And during that second year in Israel, I applied to different law schools, and one of the schools that I was accepted to was Hofstra University. And I felt like, good, I'll be back in New York. I'll be near my family. There's good communities where I could integrate myself into. And so I pivoted and went to law school, and ironically met my wife, my
Mm.
future wife, at the orientation.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so it was a culmination of like so many things just came together. It was like a perfect symphony. Looking back, at the time it was total stress and chaos, but looking back, it was symphony. I just didn't realize it.
You got a full scholarship UCLA. Seemed like you're a brilliant student. Was law school hard for you, or was it stressful? Just the law school itself, studying and case studying and writing briefs.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. So this is what I echoed already a few minutes ago about there's going to be a running theme in the background. So I'll tell you something interesting. I really struggled in law school. Looking back, is it that I was academically inept? No. In fact, my wife till this day makes jokes to people that classmates would come over and ask Igor, "Are you available to be a study partner to review materials?" The problem was is that I started experiencing severe anxiety, like
Mm,
debilitating, to a point that I had to go to my doctor and ask for anti-anxiety medication.
mm,
And I took the medication. It definitely helped settle down the anxiety. But looking back now, and after a lot of, I mean, we're talking about now, in total, at least 20 years of introspection, very deep introspection, I see that what was happening was it wasn't that law school presented academic challenge as much as I was in early stages of self-betrayal,
mm.
which I did not fully grasp. I mean, not even close. It was not until 5 years ago, so that would be 15 years later, um, to what degree I was living through self-betrayal that I was not willing to acknowledge to myself until about 5 years ago. And so law school became this enormously heavy lift because I was completely in misalignment. I did not want to be a lawyer. I did not define myself as a lawyer. I knew that the burden of family's expectations, my family of origin especially, like here you are, you dropped out of a dream that you pursued for 5 years, and like what are you going to show for yourself now? And so there were just so many directions, misalignment in that I really want to be a lawyer, misalignment in dedicating myself in this way where I knew where I really was passionate and what I really wanted to express. um, I was silencing. And so um, it was like, putting a clamp without a release valve. And
Mm.
so something inside was, yeah, it was just bottling. And yes, I completed the studies, and 3 years later, and a marriage later, in fact, I carried our first child. She was 9 months old, 8 months old, 9 months old on stage to receive the diploma. and,
Oh,
and and then life began, and I worked at two law firms, then followed by starting my own practice. That is still this day. Actually, in August was 11 years anniversary. Having my own practice, a small boutique firm. We have a few employees, three attorneys and paralegal. Um, but looking back, it was definitely, I would not say so much academic, although it was for sure. It's a really rigorous experience. It's a great experience if somebody wants that experience. I'm not against like law school per se. I think it's a tremendous training of the mind um, to experience. I really look back and feel it was a privilege to have it because that analytical thinking accompanies me till this day in many areas of my life. Um, yeah, if I would do it all over again, I probably, well, again, it's such a terrible question, honestly. But um, if I did do it all over again and I knew everything I know today, I 99% would not go to law school.
where would you go?
I would have launched my coaching slash mental health pursuits then, because now I feel the biggest gift God could give me, which is to live in alignment with my true self, which is I am a hybrid of a teacher and a healer, and to be able to serve people with the gift that God gave me, I feel is the biggest privilege that I get to have in my life, in my personal life.
That's such a gift for anybody to have. Anybody should strive to have that. Many people never experienced that. So I'm happy to hear that you
Yeah,
experienced that. Yeah.
yeah,
You were many years you were misaligned, as you say.
yeah.
What was that realization? How did you realize or you felt initial that you were misaligned? And were you kind of the dead end that you didn't know where to move, or did you have mentors, maybe supported your wife? I know there was a rabbi that's influential to you. Perhaps they who assist you to realize your potential, realize that law is not your calling. You're more than that. Again.
The first person I for sure would give the overwhelming credit to is my wife. She invited me to go into couples therapy, and
Mm.
um, not that our relationship was like suffering with something. It was more of that we were both people whose nature was how do we whatever we do, how do we do it better? It's just it's like that both we both have this proclivity of can we do this better? Is this the most optimal? Is this the, and that was kind of how her invitation was. She said she said would you go with me? No, we always do the same thing. We always go out to eat or we go out to see a show. Would you be open to doing something different? I said, what did you have in mind? And she said, can we go to couples therapy? And
Mm.
I just kind of looked at her. Wait, is something wrong? And she just says, no, I just want to do something different. And unbeknownst to me, the way everything was set up, the person that we went to said to us, well, I've been. She literally told us, the therapist told us, well, I've been kind of dabbling in this new modality. Would you guys be kind of interested in trying it out? And I was like, well, I'm here already, so shoot, what do you got? And we started this process where my wife and I were speaking directly to each other as opposed to the therapist, and the therapist was just facilitating the conversations, but we were speaking to each other. And I want to say probably about 6 months into that process, um, we were doing this thing called parent-child dialogue,
Mm.
where my wife would be role play as if one of my parents that I would choose, and I would try to regress into childhood and
Mm.
speak for my inner child. And I was having conversation with my father, and a lot of crying. It was deeply emotional experience, many of them. And during that experience, what began to drop in was how much I felt, but how much I began to realize that subconsciously I was intensely chasing his approval and thinking that I could win that approval if I would have went to law school, became a lawyer, and practiced in the profession. And as that was coming to light and I was processing it, I began to realize that I was not living my own life. I was living my life for the sake of winning my father's approval. And during one session, I don't know how it happened. The process brought it out. Um, my wife asked me, what do you want? And I said, I said two things. I don't want to do this anymore, referring to the practicing law, to being just defined as being an attorney. Um, and interestingly enough, one of the big areas of law I was doing was family law. So I was constantly dealing with conflict, um, watching what happens when people either lack the tools to engage successfully in relationships, or people became destructive in relationships. And something in me just kept saying, like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. And so I just blurted it out when she asked me. I said, I want to do this. I want to be part of people's healing journeys. I don't want to be part of people ending of their relationship journeys.
Right there. So right there, you sat in the therapy session. Interesting.
Yeah,
So there's somewhere inside you, you were preparing for this, you were ready for this purpose in life.
yeah, yeah. You said it very well. I always describe it as something was unfolding, and at the right time, it came into my consciousness, and I was able to articulate it first to my wife and then to myself. And then she asked me, "So what do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to find a way to pivot." And so what I started doing is when people would call me, I mean, just imagine this experiment. People would call and say, "Hi, I would like to come in for consultation. I'm contemplating divorce." I would then start saying in the consultation to people, "Have you ever tried um, doing couples therapy?" And they would say, "No, it's we're past that point. Unfortunately, we're irreconcilable," and things of that sort. And I would say, "Could you come in just for 2 sessions? Would you work with me for 2 sessions?" And people said, "Fine, we're willing to try." Like at this point, there's no downside, there's nothing to lose. We're heading towards divorce anyway. And most couples would then still get divorced. And so I would come home and I would tell my wife, "I see the problem. They're coming to an emergency room. It's very hard to save a life where limbs are lying on an operating table. I need to step in earlier in the game to be able to affect change. It's too late by that point." So
Mm-hmm.
I said, I need to somehow advertise myself not only as a divorce attorney. I need to be able to advertise we offer mediation services. And and then couples came in for mediation. And again, I saw the same problem. It was too late. For most of the time, it was too late. So then I started offering relationship coaching. And I would say, like, don't wait until you have to come to the emergency room. If you start sensing something's wrong, come in now. Don't wait until then. And that started to feel like I'm coming into more alignment as to strategically um, inserting myself into an earlier stages of couples relationships. Um, and so that gave birth to the relationship coaching, sort of call it department, within the firm. And I guess the word started getting out, and more people started reaching out and saying, "I heard this is what you're doing. Can we come in and also do some communications work and learn on being better listeners, learning how to empathize, validate each other, um, and how do we learn to just do this thing better, this thing called relationship." Um, and that just basically gave birth to really essentially my second business called Relationship Reimagined, um, which basically focuses on helping people acquire, work on um, the tools needed for effective relationship.
I can't help but picturing these few couples that you offer counseling leaving your office, getting in the car, and after not talking for a few weeks to each other, said, "Can you believe this schmuck? We gave him a retainer check and he refused it. He didn't take the check and offer us counseling. It's never going to work. Thank God we saved some money." Just picture it. If people say something to you, and sorry my language, but like, are you crazy? Not your wife, but like other colleagues. It's funny, but it's incredible that you understanding that. Like, it's what a irony of being in a career. You're such a out of the box person that I think lawyers like politicians. That I feel like once you're a politician, you're always a politician. The same with a lawyer. You're a
Yeah,
lawyer in the office. You're a lawyer at home. You're a lawyer. You're a lawyer
yeah,
with friends, people. or a dentist, like, let me see your cavity. Or, you go to a party, people, oh, this neighbor, etc. People try to ask for legal advice, probably when you go to wash your hands in the bathroom and stuff like that. It's,
Yes, all of these things have happened. That is true. Um, I'll tell you something that might surprise you. Logically, it makes sense that what you described should happen. Should happen. Like, what's wrong with this guy? Like, we came for one service. He's trying to like sell us on something else. But I will tell you what has happened in reality. Most of the time, people said to me, because you spoke that way, we felt safe with you. We felt you genuinely cared about us more than about taking our money. Um, we genuinely felt that you were trying to figure out how to help us rather than just be a hired gun. And, oh, there's a check, no problem. I'll kill whoever you want. You want me to destroy your spouse? I'll destroy your spouse. Um, Most of the time, there was an appreciation. Were there people who didn't retain you? 100%. 100%. And the way I look back at it now, and certainly the way I look at it now, is I'm not for them and they're not for me. It's not, nobody's bad or good in the story. It's not the right match. You are looking for a lawyer who destroys other people. They exist. You can go and hire them. I'm not that person. It would be disservice for you to hire me. Do I have an opinion about you living this way? Yeah. But I don't usually volunteer my opinion. I smile and I say, then I'm not for you. You need to find somebody who's more aligned with your mission.
do I understand correctly that what you went to is, and you became Imago therapy, right? How is that differs from regular therapy that you talk to each other versus a therapist talking talking to you or at you sometime? Is that true definition of
That
the
that
difference?
that is one significant difference between Imago and other modalities. Um, in other modalities, um, usually what they do is called triangulating. Like the way you and I are speaking now, it's we're sitting with a couple and people kind of go around sharing ideas, thoughts, the way I call it, and it's not in any way to put down the other modalities. In fact, I believe that I integrate a lot from Gottman, from EFT, emotionally focused therapy, um, into the Imago dialogue framework. But this concept of shifting from speaking to a third party to speaking to each other, there is some, in Imago, we call this the space between us. That space, Imago conceptualizes as like a living, breathing organism. What we feed into the space will either nurture us back or it will be like a toxic environment that destroys us. And so the experience of having consciousness of the relational space becomes more heightened when the couple practices speaking to each other rather than speaking to a third party. So I think the power is in the ability to access that framework of the what we call the dialogue, and then I try to be I'm very into being versatile, and whatever works I'm gonna throw in. So within that framework you could really overlay a lot of tools and techniques from other modalities, but the more the couple speaks with each other, the more they have this enlightening moments of, oh, this is why you feel the way you do. Or now I begin to understand why that was upsetting to you. And those aha moments happen because they have to hold space for each other rather than hearing conceptually from a third party. There's something that shifts when we move from conceptual to experiential.
Feels like it's easier said than done when the couple comes to the emergency room, so to speak. As you, I love the
Yeah,
metaphor that you
yeah,
that I that you mentioned. They haven't been speaking, and or they've been speaking and just toxic, having these toxic conversations, or no conversation, that totally ignorant, leading a parallel life, living in the same house, but not in the same, not sharing any interest or hobbies,
hmm
etc., spending time with each other. And it's how you need to be for both couple, both people in the couple need to have this deep belief and desire to work on it. I always almost, how do you, what's a vessel? What's a way? What's a method to, if let's say I bring my husband, I believe, I'm a believer in your method, I'm here to be healed. My husband is not so much, or vice versa. How do you process a challenge? I understand everybody is different, but when not both of the both of the husband and wife are on board with that.
For me, this question would need 2 to 3 hours
Okay, let's
to be
schedule
to
another
be
conversation
to
then.
be to be adequately answered. No, no, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that preface as a way to deflect your question. I just want to say that
I
there
understand.
is tremendous depth to what you're asking. But if it's okay with you, I do want to give a flavor of an answer.
Yes.
I'm a very big fan. We'll incorporate a little bit of lightness right now. I'm a very big fan of a cartoon called Kung Fu Panda. While it's a really cute cartoon about a panda, I also happen to believe that it is incredibly profound.
Mm.
Um, and kind of like the way we talk about the Torah, that it's accessible to a 5-year-old on a 5-year-old level. It's accessible to a sage, 80 years old. Um, the cartoon could just be viewed as cute, nice story of a protagonist, the unlikely hero who emerges and then triumphs over the evil. It's the classic hero journey paradigm. But in the story, there's also a teacher, a master, and a disciple, teacher and a student. And there's a scene where the turtle, who is like the master, is talking to his student, who is going to be teaching the panda. And the teacher and the student, who is the mouse, says he can't be taught. There's no way. He doesn't belong here. He it was a mistake. And the turtle, of course, in his Zen master voice says, all he needs from you is that you believe. But, and that's the mouse is going, but all he needs from you is you believe he can, and then he will.
Mm. I
This is
see.
where Imago is, to me, so, um, I mean, the word that's coming in is futuristic, but even in the Imago community, the way they like to call it is quantum. Imago is quantum. Quantum physics posits that mere looking at an object changes the object. Now, this is like, it itself needs understanding. You would have to at least dabble a little bit into quantum to understand what I just said. But when a couple comes in, if I, the third party, am coming in for myself with a mindset, a attitude, a belief that I am the one who is going to save, or I should say better, attempt to save this relationship. I'm doing something, but I'm not doing Imago. Imago believes that the two people who came in have all the tools and resources they need to succeed.
Mm.
Either they are blocked from accessing their own tools because of trauma, family of origin, cultural experiences, whatever it may be, and therefore the relationship is suffering. The relational space can't hold it because the two people have not accessed the resources they need. My job is to travel along with them towards self-discovery, not towards my predetermined outcome for them. So when a couple comes in and they're fighting, or we call this dragger, draggee, alluding to what you said a few minutes ago, one wants to be here, the other one was dragged to be here. I don't start with, okay, guys, let's do some couples work. I start with, what brings you here? And then I wait for answers.
And what
Then
would be the typical response to that?
our
Or most
communication,
frequent
the
response?
most frequent response is our communication's horrible. We're not able to engage each other for 5 minutes without fighting. We've been doing this for a long time and we feel we are at a dead end. And we're basically contemplating ending the relationship unless there's some miracle juice you can have as drink that is going to undo this impasse. Some flavor of this is the most dominant narrative, and then there's all sorts of other things, infidelity, on all kinds of fronts, emotional, physical, financial, all sorts of things go on. Disagreement on how to raise children. To me, at that point, that's noise. Everything comes down to, a lot of things come down to we're incapable of communicating without total breakdown in the relational, you know, frame. So then I ask, this what I'm about to tell you is actually from another modality called discernment counseling. Discernment counseling, which I'm a very big fan of, believes before you could do any counseling work, you got to get a buy-in from the two participants.
Mm.
So I will ask the couple, are you willing to do the work? And I always tell them, you have three doors you could walk through. You can end the relationship. You can stay at a status quo, at least until you implode, or you could dedicate a certain amount of time, let's say 6 months, to intensive couples therapy, but no evaluation every day, no peeking up and checking. It's like pretend I'm your personal trainer at the gym, and you can't tell me after the first workout, you know, Igor, it's not going to work for me. I was hoping to lose 20 pounds. I'd be like, whoa, 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 whoa. You can't pin this on me. Give me 90 days of a meal plan, and then we will evaluate. But you can't come for one workout and tell me, yeah, that didn't work. Never mind. And usually people go like, yeah, you're right. That makes no sense. So good. Guess what? Emotional workout is going to be just like that. You got to commit to a regimen. I'm going to be giving you exercises. You're going to be practicing in between sessions, and we're going to reevaluate in 3 to 6 months. That's door number 3. Only the two of you can decide if you can walk through those doors. I could help answer questions and help, whatever way you need to be informed so that you could feel like you're making an informed decision for yourself. Once the couple decides, and I tell them, by the way, and I'm not a car salesman, there's nothing to decide this moment. Today, I'm just here to empower you with the information. Go home, think about it, and then once they come back and decide which of the 3 doors they want to go through. So if they commit to door number 3, now I know that I have a buy-in. Now we can begin the work. Only then we can begin the work. And then the work will begin with setting safety in the sessions, agreeing on rules of engagement. That's what I call it, setting rules of engagement. How are we going to do this dance? Agreeing who talks, who doesn't, how are we going to be quiet? What are we going to do if we start feeling dysregulated and we can't hold space anymore? We agree to all of these things, and then we begin slowly introducing the dialogue format into the process. This is 30,000 feet aerial view of of your question.
Does Imago think, I don't know, Freudian theories look down on, and I don't know how that relates to Imago therapy, that a lot of problems, if in communication or challenges, let's say in communication, couples stem from lack, some breakdown, let's say in intimacy, as well as um, a strain of financial distress in the family. Do you think that perhaps might be, or that's not how Imago views the lack of communication in couples? That the root is not lack of communication. That's a sequence that would happen,
Hmm.
aftermath of something deeper going on.
I'm going to try to answer. I might be missing something in the way I understood it. So based on my answer, you'll tell me if there's a follow-up. Um, First, Imago does incorporate some of Freudian theory, particularly what we call the childhood wounds, meaning that we all were raised by parents who are imperfect, because the premise is none of us are perfect. So that means our parents were imperfect, just like we are imperfect parents. Which also means that if my parents were imperfect, they were not able to deliver perfect parenting the way I would have needed it growing up. So as I'm growing up and I'm going through my developmental stages towards adulthood, there are things that are happening, whether I was crying and my parent didn't attend to me right away, or I felt abandoned because my parents were not around, or my parents, what we call helicopter parents, sit straight, don't move, fix your shirt, and you're like, I can't breathe. In any of these scenarios, it shaped, like, think of it like wet cement, and created contours around my being, around my personality. Then I became adult. I pushed all of it into my subconscious. And when I go about through life, or Imago will tell you, particularly as you're going through mate selection process, our subconscious is actually driving more dominantly that process than our conscious, which is much smaller part of us than the subconscious. And so the subconscious is seeking out to pair up with someone who can either soothe, comfort unresolved parts of me. The kicker is that after I find that person and I'm enamored, ooh, finally I found the one that touches this. We then enter into a committed relationship, whether married or not married, and then I begin to resent my partner specifically for those things that I found enamored and cool and beautiful and inviting during the dating phase. In Imago, we call this going from romantic love to power struggle. Power struggle stage presents tremendous opportunity to for the couple that will willing to do the journey to move from power struggle to what Imago calls true love. True love is where we took our subconscious, brought it into consciousness, and now we understand how we do the dance in our relationship. And therefore, we can show up with compassion to the very things that before drove us crazy. So we come late to an event, and my wife gets upset at me, why are we late? When we were at power struggle stage, I felt attacked and criticized, and I would recoil and I would go into my shell. Now, when if we made it past the power struggle, we both understand that she's getting upset because when she was a kid, her parents would kick and scream and yell when they were late. So she's experiencing anxiety over being late. So it's really not being late. It's the echo of her parents still living in the back of her consciousness. And I am recoiling from the comments because I grew up with critical parents. And so I have a hard time hearing the criticism. But now she can understand that I'm recoiling not to her, but I'm recoiling to my own inner voice of hearing my parents. And so, Gabor Mate is a famous, world-renowned trauma medical doctor. He has this great line that he defines trauma not as what happened to me, but what happened inside of me.
Mm.
It's the internal conversations we're having with ourselves after receiving the external information. And that's what Imago helps bring to light, is that to have the ultimate realization that I'm not reacting to my partner, I'm reacting to my internal unresolved stuff.
That's so interesting. I think we need like 10 conversations about just about this because it's, we are pressed and I understand on time. Otherwise, I'll continue on and on. Um, how many, I don't know if you ask people, if couples, if you ask him if you would marry the same person, what is the percentage of people say yes or no? Do you know?
I think what is difficult about that question, well, there's a few things. One of the things that's difficult about this question is I think you will get a different survey feedback depending on which population you're asking. Meaning, if you're asking those who are happily married, right, I expect a good percent are going to be saying, yes, I would marry the same person. People who are right now in stage of distress are going to tell me, no, I would have for sure married somebody else. And people who are just coasting along, probably 50-50.
Mhm.
Um, what I would tell you, though, is that, and tell me if this helps at all, what I would tell you that I've been observing, doing this now for a decade and a half between divorce work and relationship coaching, is I would say the following. The people we are when we enter into committed relationships are very different than the people we evolve into as we start families, as we progress through our careers. And the challenge becomes for a lot of people is, and I find this comes up frequently in my meetings with clients, is that there is almost a existential question
Mm.
that hovers over relationships. And the existential question is, am I now with the right one? And it's a very hard question. Spun, spins out of that question anxiety, distress for people, right? Because is it I'm here because I owe it to them after all these years? I'm here because I really like to be here. I'm here for some other ulterior motives. One thing I do tell couples all the time is you're in a hard spot right now with your partner. You can end this relationship now, but I'm telling you that overwhelming percent, your next relationship is going to look a lot like this one. Why? Because Imago will tell you, according to Imago, is until you resolve your what um, um, the book Homecoming, very very famous. The author's name escapes me right now. I have it on my shelf. He was like really the pioneer in the 1980s on inner child work. Um, and he has this line: finishing your unfinished business. Um, we live in I guess it would take me to a whole commentary right now, but we live in a world where very little resilience, a lot of comfort, and deep desire for instant gratification. This is a powder keg for disaster when it comes to relationships, certainly romantic relations. And so, what I tend to tell couples is if you leave now, before you go through that process of moving from the subconscious into conscious, you will enter next relationship through your subconscious, which means you will marry a different person, but very much similar version of your current spouse. So if you actually want to rewrite the future, you have to go through the process of moving from the subconscious into conscious. And then if you conclude, this is truly not for me, you will make that decision from a place of peace, place of clarity. And then, God willing, if you're moving into the next relationship, you will be so much better equipped and positioned to be engaging that mate selection process from a conscious place. That's why we call this unconscious coupling. Most relationships are product of unconscious coupling because you didn't do the work. And until you do the work, you can't claim that you did it consciously. So I tell the couples that if at least if anything, you feel like you're heading towards an end, it's worthwhile to do that work. I mean, unless obviously there is abuse or something going on that would make it possible. But if you can, give it a chance, do the work, bring yourself to that proper enlightenment, because to me, from that perspective, you win no matter what. If it's meant to end, you're going to end it, first of all, more likely, more peacefully, without wasting tens of thousands of dollars on lawyers that should be spent on your family instead. And two is you're going to have clarity. You'll know that this is not for you. And so it's not about vindictive anymore. It's not about reactive. It's just about living in alignment and making the right decision for yourself. I have plenty of couples who ended their marriage. It might shock you that I say it this way. Couples that have ended their relationships beautifully, with respect, with integrity. And you know who is the biggest winner of all of that? Their children.
And that's a big realization too, from divorcing being,
Yes.
worst enemies to
Yes.
being on friendly terms. That
Yes.
Also a great work for you to be done. Almost feel like you should work with couples who are getting married, with young couples. I don't know if you do that. If people
Yes.
approach you prior to getting married,
Yeah. Great point.
almost some people go to the priest or rabbi,
Right.
but I think they should come to you and kind of for you to set the framework of their marriage, so to speak, of
Yeah.
relationship, not a marriage.
Yeah.
Do you
Thank you.
work with?
Yes. Yes. In fact, I created like a 3-class curriculum for either engaged or newlywed couples, giving them like a nice introduction into the effective communication skills, especially the dialogue, and being able to start practicing, like to develop a good degree of fluency to use the dialogue so that they could navigate the typical sort of moments of tension and bickering that in the early stage of relationship could feel light, but once it starts festering and it's not being addressed, um, that's when things become, bad. And then they're coming in the emergency room much harder to recover. So yes, I did start working with couples. I have not kind of like rolled out a big campaign. So it's still very much just kind of word of mouth, but I totally agree with you. To be able to be empowered with these tools, um, I think would serve tremendously than trying to wing it.
I think we'll save down the road. We'll save lots of emotional turmoil. I believe.
Yeah.
I What did you found? What were you surprised the most from people's stories that from the couples from working with couples that came to you? I understand the communication, lack of communication is common thread, but perhaps you can think of, few couples that, wow, I can't believe that people can stoop so low, or, I don't understand how you lived until this moment, or anything you felt that you've seen it all, but you're still surprised.
It it's a surprise and a confirmation, all kind of wrapped in one, which is every time it happens, till this day, I've worked with hundreds of couples, and till this day, when it happens for me, it's like, wow, I can't believe. Like I can believe, but I can't believe like to what degree this is such essential, crucial part of the picture, and that is the impact that our immediate caretakers have on our formal years of our upbringing. Every time the couple would do the parent-child dialogue, or just do some deepening around how does my childhood inform my adult life, it's remarkable the extent, the grip that those experiences have over um, over our present lives as adults, thinking we're just going about our day, we're just my friend was telling me recently, we're adulting, we're adulting, or AKA the extreme sport called adulting, and we're attempting this great experiment of being adults, paying bills, and going to work, and raising kids, and totally outside of that conscious radar is this great controlling device over my being called my childhood experiences, and the way they shaped me, the way they define me, the sense of self that I live with as a result of what I experienced. And then, either tragically or successfully, am I rewriting the story for the next generation, or am I just passing along the same legacy? Sometimes people loosely want to call it generational trauma.
Bless you.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Yeah.
Igor, healing is, I think, God's work, and a heavy load can take a toll. And I know therapists learn how to build a wall. But I wanted to, how do you unwind after a long day, after this meaningful work? What brings you joy aside from this?
There are a few things that come to mind that I do, let's call it loosely, for self-care. I exercise pretty much daily, other than on Sabbath when I take a break. I'm very like intentional when my body just kind of gets to move around, get sweaty. Um, I see how much it affects my mind, being alert, awake, present. So I'm very like intentional to make sure I exercise. It's usually in the morning after I drive my kids carpool and bring them to school. I usually try to go straight to the gym. So I try not to start sessions yet unless it's some emergency. And then I just kind of go off into the marathon after. But I feel very clearly difference in the days when I exercise and the days I didn't. And certainly, I think as I'm getting old, certainly once I was past 40, um, I see a tremendous difference when I exercise and when I don't, and the overall impact on just my overall being. The second thing that really, really touches my soul and my heart is writing. Like I said in the beginning, I very much been like over this past year, I've been in a season of writing. I hope to be in that season for the next while, because I see how much is sort of oozing out of me when I sit in front of the screen and start writing. I started a Substack just to post even short things because I see that the book projects are a bit longer before the books will be rolled out. I'm like, kind of like dabbling in, not dabbling, I'm writing, but I'm sort of like in, I think, 6 projects right now, most of them around relationships, just touching in different ways that space. Um, so I love when I sit down and start writing. Things just sort of my internal symphony starts playing of I am thinking about this couple that's struggling right now. I'm thinking about this couple that's making some progress. I'm thinking about how I'm showing up for them. Should I be pivoting, changing anything? And for me, it's like a symphony's playing, and I'm just trying to pull it all together and just be in it, in the flow as it moves. Um, so writing is the second thing. Third thing is I see my own therapist. I used to see weekly. I see him now like once every 2 weeks. And I really want to stress this that I'm not saying this sentence like as a throwaway. Oh yeah, I see a therapist. I can't stress enough. I believe it, so I try to live it for myself, not only preach it to my clients. How important it is to sit with a safe person in front of whom I could bare my soul, discuss the difficult things, and how much ultimately it helps me serve my clients, and how much it allows me to stay very connected to my own life's journey that I don't want to be disconnected from. I love my life journey right now, and I want to stay plugged into it. And so um, I very much look forward to every other Monday it's on my calendar, and I wait for the opportunity to share what's been coming up and what I'm sitting with, and it's a tremendous, tremendous sort of for that for the lifetime run that that it should be a marathon, not a race. And so for that sort of the longevity of my work, I see how instrumental it is um, for my emotional, mental sort of just like going to the gym. Um, and finally, one more thing I want to share, and also again, not as a throwaway, is very deeply focused and meaningful time moments with my wife and with my children. Because you said something that could just kind of be a passing thought, but I want to grab onto it because I appreciate very deeply this piece, which is I try to be very intentional when I sit with clients that it's not about me, that I'm a vessel, hoping that I cleared as much as possible of my own stuff out of the way so that we can call it divine, the universe can enter through me and I can just be present with another human being. As Carl Jung famously says, it's my WhatsApp status on my account. It says, master all the techniques, know all the theories, but as you touch a human soul, be just another human soul. And to be able to just sit in presence, it's an interesting experience because it's almost like I cease to exist. As, as spooky as that might sound. Well, I cease to exist for 8 to 12 hours a day. And so to the experience of to come back and re-embody myself and now be a father, be a husband, be a friend, not do a husband, do a father, be. It's like an interesting shift to oscillate into presence, vessel, and then actually, like, hey, there's still me here. I also have thoughts and feelings, and maybe even have opinions, And so to oscillate, it's an interesting life of a therapist, life of a healer is an interesting experience. To carry both of those worlds, my own world and the world of others. So I find it to be very like soothing and playful and important when I then carve out time just for presence, especially with people I care about.
What do you find extraordinary in every day?
I find extraordinary that every person has capacity and potential to move from what I call ego consciousness, taking care of myself, protecting myself, comparing myself, being resentful at others, being jealous, ego consciousness, and to be able to shift into soul consciousness, see others, celebrate others, appreciate others, appreciate being with others. That gap, when people come in, is usually what people share is it cannot be traversed. The chasm is so big, it's not possible. I mean, sort of the question you asked me a few minutes ago. I can't see you. You've inflicted so much pain in my life. You can't see me. And that's when I try to help them slowly discover that that's the ego consciousness speaking, the one that wants to protect, that wants to compare. And that somewhere in that journey, we begin to build an invisible bridge towards each other. And we shift into soul consciousness. I see you, and you see me. And we might be irreconcilable at the end. We might not be able to continue this relationship in the end. But there was a moment in time where we were able to see and touch each other's world. And in that experience, we discovered we were more than our ego. We were souls. And that we could touch soul consciousness. To me, that's miraculous. Because most people will live out life from ego consciousness, thinking that that's all there was.
Igor, that was very meaningful and profound conversation, and I truly thank you for that.
Thank you for letting me share it.